Once you've identified your essential standards, it's time to identify and set some general guidelines. In part 1 of this video, we will address issues related to the CFA specifications. In part 2, we will look at CFA administration procedures. We want to make clear that all of these videos represent our, being the teaching and learning team's recommendations when going through this process. We believe that the following guidelines will help to ensure better quality assessments and a quality process that will benefit both teachers and students. It is a good idea for each of your sites to discuss these guidelines and set the expectations for your school and each department. Doing this before you build your CFAs will help you determine if each CFA meets the expectations of your site. So let's talk about the guidelines for what your CFA should look like. First, we need to make sure that every question on the CFA is tied to one of your previously identified essential standards. Next, we need to make sure that we have enough questions to give us confidence in our students' understanding or mastery of each essential. With this in mind, it is very difficult to know if a student fully understands a standard by answering only 1 or 2 questions. Students could guess or make a careless error which could skew how we respond to the data. Remember, the purpose of these assessments is to give us formative information to respond when students are still struggling with a concept or skill. Our recommendation, at least for multiple choice questions, is that you have at least 4 questions per standard. With this in mind, we recommend having between 1 to 3 essentials per CFA for a couple of reasons. 1. This ensures that the students can complete the CFA in a reasonable amount of time. Second, if remediation is needed, it will be over content that is still relatively fresh on the student's mind. One exception to the limit of 3 essentials per CFA would be if you want to reassess your essentials in a combined way to show growth. Next, it is important to consider the depth of knowledge of your assessments. Unfortunately, many test banks and questions found in textbooks contain mostly DOK Level 1 questions. Therefore, many of our assessments mostly require students to recall and memorize information and don't ask them more in-depth questions that require analysis and critical thinking. We recommend having a variety of level 1, 2, and 3 questions. After looking at state standards, student development, grade level, and state and national test information, we have come up with some depth of knowledge ranges teachers can use as a guide when making new CFAs or tweaking existing CFAs. We recommend that each assessment and, where applicable, each essential standard reflect the DOK distributions on this chart. We know that this is not always possible, but moving towards getting close to these percentages is a step in the right direction. As you can see, we don't want to see mostly level 1 questions or mostly level 3 questions. In each grade, you will find most questions should be DOK level 2. When discussing when the assessment should be administered, the main goal is to administer CFA as soon after all of the essentials on that CFA have been taught. You don't want to finish teaching an essential and not have the CFA until a month later. This discussion may impact how many essentials you decide to include on each CFA. Next, you want to consider the sequence of the CFAs. Ideally, this is agreed upon by each teacher teaching that subject and grade. If teachers are not following the exact same pacing, work towards finding a time to administer the CFA that works for all teachers. We recommend that each school set some basic parameters for when CFAs will be administered, while also allowing flexibility within grade levels or departments to fit the CFAs into teaching and learning cycles. The last thing to think about when addressing when CFAs will be administered is scheduling a time to meet and discuss the results of the CFA. We recommend this meeting and discussion happen as soon as possible after the results are in. This allows for timely conversations about teaching strategies and areas where students are still struggling. It also means if remediation is needed, that it can happen while the content or skill is still fresh on students' minds. The second area that needs to be agreed upon is how CFAs will be administered. Several aspects should be considered. First, since these are common assessments, they should not only be administered around the same date, they should also be administered in the same way. Will the assessment be given at the beginning or end of a period? Will it be given all at once or split over multiple days? Will the assessment be timed? These are just a few of the questions teachers should answer before administering their CFAs. We also recommend coming to a consensus on whether or not teachers will review for the assessments. We recommend that teachers do not review. This allows us to get a truer feel for how our students learn the material the first time around. Some of these questions may seem excessive, but even small changes in the way two teachers give the same assessment to students can affect how students perform on that assessment. Establishing these CFA guidelines will help set the stage for creating high-quality CFAs. These guidelines will help provide a litmus test for both what your CFAs look like and your process for administering CFAs. It gives you a target to shoot for and can provide a guide from where you are now to where you want to be. Now that you've chosen your essential standards, had discussions about the guidelines for administering the CFA, in our next video we will walk you through on how to actually create your CFA.